A pitch drop experiment is a long-term experiment which measures the flow of a piece of pitch over many years. Pitch is the name for any of a number of highly viscous liquids which appear solid, most commonly bitumen, also known as asphalt. At room temperature, tar pitch flows at a very low rate, taking several years to form a single drop. The best-known version of the experiment was started in 1927 by Thomas Parnell of the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia, to demonstrate to students that some substances which appear solid are highly viscous fluids. Parnell poured a heated sample of the pitch into a sealed funnel and allowed it to settle for 3 years in 1930. The seal at the neck of the funnel was cut, allowing the pitch to start flowing. A glass dome covers the funnel and it is placed on display outside a lecture theater. Each droplet forms and falls over a period of about a decade. Between 1961 and 2013, the experiment was supervised by John Mainstone. The seventh drop fell at approximately 4:45 p.m. on July 3, 1988, while the experiment was on display at Brisbane's World Expo 88. However, apparently no one witnessed the drop fall itself. Mainstone had stepped out to get a drink at the moment it occurred. The eighth drop fell on November 28, 2000, allowing experimenters to calculate the pitch as having a viscosity of approximately 230 billion times that of water. This experiment is recorded in Guinness World Records as the world's longest continuously running laboratory experiment, and it is expected there is enough pitch in the funnel to allow it to continue for at least another 100 years. This experiment is predated by 2 other, still active, scientific devices, the Oxford Electric Bell, 1840, and the Beverly Clock, 1864, but each of these has experienced brief interruptions since 1937. The experiment was not originally carried out under any special controlled atmospheric conditions, meaning the viscosity could vary throughout the year with fluctuations in temperature. Sometime after the seventh drop fell, 1988, air conditioning was added to the location where the experiment takes place. The lower average temperature has lengthened each drop's stretch before it separates from the rest of the pitch in the funnel, and correspondingly the typical interval between drops has increased from 8 years to 1,213 years. In October 2005, Mainstone and Parnell were awarded the Ig Nobel Prize in Physics, a parody of the Nobel Prize, for the pitch drop experiment. Mainstone subsequently commented, "I am sure that Thomas Parnell would have been flattered to know that Mark Henderson considers him worthy to become a recipient of an Ig Nobel Prize." Professor Parnell's award citation would of course have to applaud the new record he had thereby established for the longest lead time between the performance of a seminal scientific experiment and the conferral of such an award, be it a Nobel or an Ig Nobel Prize. The experiment is monitored by a webcam, but technical problems prevented the November 2000 drop from being recorded. The pitch drop experiment is on public display on Level 2 of Parnell Building in the School of Mathematics and Physics at the St. Lucia campus of the University of Queensland. Hundreds of thousands of Internet users check the live stream each year. John Mainstone died on August 13, 2013, aged 78, following a stroke. Custodianship then passed to Andrew White. The ninth drop touched the eighth drop on April 12, 2014. However, it was still attached to the funnel. On April 24, Professor White decided to replace the beaker holding the previous 8 drops before the ninth drop fused to them, which would have permanently affected the ability of further drops to form. While the bell jar was being lifted, the wooden base wobbled and the ninth drop snapped away from the funnel. Timeline for the University of Queensland experiment. The pitch drop experiment at Trinity College Dublin in Ireland was started in October 1944 by an unknown colleague of the Nobel Prize winner Ernest Walton, while he was in the physics department of Trinity College. This experiment, like the one at University of Queensland, was set up to demonstrate the high viscosity of pitch. This physics experiment sat on a shelf in a lecture hall at Trinity College unmonitored for decades as it dripped a number of times from the funnel to the receiving jar below, also gathering layers of dust. In April 2013, about a decade after the previous pitch drop, physicists at Trinity College noticed that another drip was forming. They moved the experiment to a table to monitor and record the falling drip with a webcam, allowing all present to watch. The pitch dripped around 1700 hours IST on July 11, 2013, marking the first time that a pitch drop was successfully recorded on camera. Based on the results from this experiment, the Trinity College physicists estimated that the viscosity of the pitch is about 2 million times that of honey, or about 20 billion times the viscosity of water. A pitch drop experiment was begun at the University of St. Andrews in 1927. The same year as the Queensland experiment, no evidence has emerged of any contact between Parnell and the instigator or instigators of the St. Andrews experiment. The pitch in the St. Andrews experiment flows in a largely steady, but extremely slow stream. At some stage, likely in 1984, St. Andrews professor John Allen modified the St. Andrews experiment to bring its setup closer to that of the University of Queensland experiment. In 2014, media reported that a pitch drop experiment had been recently rediscovered at Aberystwyth University in Wales. Dating from 1914, it predates the Queensland experiment by 13 years, but as the pitch is more viscous, or the average temperature lower, this experiment has not yet produced its first drop and is not expected to for over 1,000 years. Another pitch in funnel demonstration was begun in 1902 by the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh and is in Edinburgh at the Royal Scottish Museum's successor institution, the National Museum of Scotland. The known records of its behavior are incomplete. It is known to have dripped once at some time between the 4th and the 6th of June 2016 and on at least one occasion in the past, but the time and number of the previous drip or drips is unknown. Furthermore, the June 2016 drip happened shortly after the experiment was taken out of museum storage, and the physical movement may have caused it to drip at that time. In the Hunterian Museum at the University of Glasgow are two pitch-based demonstrations by Lord Kelvin from the 19th century. Kelvin placed some bullets on top of a dish of pitch, and corks at the bottom. Over time, the bullets sank and the corks floated. Lord Kelvin also showed that the pitch flows like glaciers, with a mahogany ramp that allowed it to slide slowly downward and form shapes and patterns similar to glaciers in the Alps. This model was considered as an inspiration for the expected properties of luminiferous ether.